after being feeling blocked for quite a while, I'm starting up my memoirs again. My memoirs, Daughters of the Shadow Men. Now, one reason why this, and I've got to do it, I mean, I'm 79. I don't have that much time left.
Did that X-Lax work for you? Well, you said you were
yes.
blocked.
Oh, no. Anyway, I've got him sitting here dressed like the sort of representative of my father, who was the shadow man in my memoir. And I also think...
I like my hat, folks. It's 2 sizes too big, hey, but that's why it hangs.
You're to sit there and look. You're not to talk. He doesn't know anything about the shadow man. He doesn't even believe they're there, but...
Oh, I know they're there.
But what I mean to say is why it's so hard to write about this problem is it hasn't emerged into the American consciousness or even maybe the world as a problem. It's because the women aren't ready yet to acknowledge there could be a problem there, and the men certainly don't want to because they feel that that'll be a lot of trouble for them when the women all get riled up and checking them out and so on. But I think the shadow man problem, which is when a man marries a woman and he has a family, but he is still tied to relationships in the shadows with other men. And this could have started even with molestation, early molestation. And, you know, if you molest a boy to the point that he's having the feelings, that's not going to go away. That knowledge, that experience, even if it's by a molester that he hates, or he's still going to have those feelings. I was molested by a man at 5 years old. He molested me to sexual feeling at 5. And I was just shocked and horrified to think that I didn't even know a little girl could have sexual feelings.
I didn't either.
Well, you're hearing it for the first time. But they can. And older, they would have more. They would have more sexual feelings. So it stands to reason that if a boy is molested by another male to any lengths, he's going to have those feelings and they're going to be in his consciousness. And he may just later on take up or express these feelings and meet others who elicit those feelings from him. So then when he goes to get married, you know, the life of a gay person, if you're not really sold on this kind of lifestyle, it's just going to be terribly hard. You know, my dad was a 6-year-old bachelor. He'd experienced what it was to be alone and not have a family. I don't even think he thought he was going to ever get married, because there were other old bachelors around the community that just drank and lived it up and partied with men all their lives. Yes. And he...
Have you ever seen a cowboy by himself?
Well, your
cowboys.
concept of cowboys is different.
I think you're
there are all kinds of
Roy
cowboys.
Rogers,
there's all kinds of
Gene
cowboys.
Autry, and Andy Devine.
Oh, I doubt it. I doubt it. There's all kinds. There may be lone cowboys who just have their own spread and they don't even connect with other men.
Clint Eastwood,
I would say,
right?
I would say that the cowboy culture that would give rise to the shadow men problem would be those that camped out a lot of years, a lot of weeks during the year, taking care of their cattle, which they did in the early days. And it's a horse age, so they had to ride a long, long ways. They didn't have pickup trucks to take them there and their horses there. So that would give rise to men spending a lot of time with men, or teens that they took with them to help. And I'd say that was the kind of circumstances that caused ranchers and so on to have develop this shadow man problem in the place where I was raised. And of course it was secretive. I mean, nobody ever talked about it. In fact, when I stumbled onto it when I was very young, I thought, oh my God, how am I going to handle this? And nobody talked about it. The women didn't know it existed. They couldn't even,
Can I ask you a question? Now, seriously. When you go into town, whether you call these things towns, and you go to the saloon and you ask them where the local bordello is, the guy is not going to say, you want the guys or the girls?
Oh, what a smart aleck. But that's true. Well, I mean, if they went to town and looked for the bordello, they had probably just wanted to change.
Guys, believe me, they got plenty of guys out there.
They didn't, out in the bunkhouse or out camped out somewhere. They didn't need to go to town to get that. The women. And
I swear.
So to them, maybe women were a novelty. They needed. But then somebody had to.
You're just not built the same way I am. I don't know what to tell you.
My grandfather, who I think was a shadow man, was a sober one. So he was a lot more responsible and difficult. And he didn't marry till he was 30 years old.
They give you a clue there, doesn't
And
it?
he married a little young, 10 years younger woman who was totally naive, wouldn't even have. And my mother was 19 when my dad married her, 8 years younger. And she read a lot, and she was very, I'd say pretty hip about most things, but not about that. So she seemed completely baffled all her marriage about why my dad would drink, go off, and disappear.
Your mother's hippie? Was a hippie? Is
No, you didn't hear me. I said hip. She was hip.
Oh, she had big hips.
In fact, no.
Big.
Hey!
I
said you can add levity, but please control it. My mother, I'm thankful to say, tumbled before she died, and I was even able to talk to her about this and tell her. Yes, I was about.
No. What did you say?
And the way she tumbled is she got a third boyfriend. Tumbled to this problem is she got a third boyfriend who'd been married, had children, and his
third boyfriend.
Yes, well, a third husband type.
Oh, I see.
And she had two husbands, and this one was going to be her third one. She was going married, and he had been married, and his wife called him a bisexual. This was the singer. Yeah, the singer.
Oh, the one she spent $20,000 on?
Oh, yeah. She was she just loved him.
Why can't I find women like this?
But anyway, he had come out because he was in entertainment and show business. So he had come out as a gay man to some of them, and but not to my mother. And so we asked him, us daughters, we didn't want her to marry this guy. And so we said, well, we think you're a bisexual. And he said, oh, yeah, I am, but don't tell your mother. She couldn't take it. But I'm glad that man came along. I think my mother was attracted to the same kind of man again. And so we told Mother. We said, well, we've already told Mother that we think you're bisexual or gay, and he said, he's going like, oh, but she denied it. At first she'd say, I don't see anything and we say, Mother, he cruises all the time. Why do you want to marry a guy like that? And finally, she thought it all over. She was up like almost 80 at the time. And she the same age as I am. She was a hip woman like I am.
You're pretty hippie.
Yeah, we were both hippie. But she finally thought it all over and told him that she wanted him to go on his way. And when I told her that I thought our dad had this problem,
was this after they made the album, the Philharmonic?
Yeah, oh yes, with the Los Angeles, yeah.
You see, these stories are so absurd, nobody believes them, except I got this stupid CD, right? This guy's singing, she pays, what, $20,000 to rent
yes.
one session?
Oh yes, he took her for quite a bit of money, but that was his
Why can't I find a woman like
well,
that?
he was a singer, he had to get money from people.
I can sing.
Hey.
I know, I'm supposed to shut up.
So, anyway... I then talked to her, she denied it. Oh, absolutely, just got mad when I told her about our dad, that I thought he had this problem and had it, and he was having affairs on the side with males, and oh, she just had a spell, and one of them was with my molester. So this was significant. It had to be talked about. And my mother just... Oh, she just got mad at me. She ordered me not to tell a family. Don't ruin the grandchildren's memories. And I said, Mother, the grandchildren are not going to have the truth. Isn't the truth more important than spinning some kind of fantasy? That's what we've been doing for years, is everybody spins a fantasy. And that's what the grandchildren are fed. Well, in that case, they don't talk about whether their ancestor was a bank robber, secret bank robber, or anything like that.
What makes you think the grandkids even give a flying?
Well, they do. They do. Well, that's what stopped me, is because the grandchildren did care about this, and they just were pretty indignant to think I was going to blacken the name of their grandfather and make him look that bad. And well, but my mother finally came around, and I said, well, do you think this is true now?
Is that tumbling? She tumbled?
Yeah, she tumbled, yes, she tumbled. And she said, yes. She said, I believe it now. She said, he certainly didn't love me, meaning that I think he did love her, but he didn't love her the way she needed to be loved. And this is this.
Wait a minute, she's got 5 daughters. What?
Well, that's not the love of a man.
Yeah, but he
and I would say that my father,
I think he
wanted to be a husband. He wanted the marriage, but he didn't want to be or do what he needed to do. And this is honesty. Honesty. How can you have a marriage without honesty? You can't. And my mother, without even realizing, she launched off on some affairs herself. So then she developed a terrible problem during the marriage. Yes, well, she didn't launch off until she was through childbearing. She didn't want to have a child that didn't belong to my dad, I'm sure.
Didn't you tell me that one time your mother gave the word promiscuity a whole new meaning?
Yes, and now this was so embarrassing and painful for us daughters to have our mother doing this. Now what is that? I mean, grandchildren, mother became just as much of a problem, and this is why it's so painful to write this memoir, to say how my parents sort of became dysfunctional in reaction to what was going on. And my mother wasn't aware of what was going on, but she was retaliating in the same way. And I'd listen to my dad arguing with her. He'd find out or suspect someone, another man, and so I'd hear him in there just arguing. But he never could really get through, and I'd be laying there listening, and I'd think, well, how can he argue against this when he's doing the same thing himself? And he knows it. He knows he is. So I can't tell you what a dysfunctional, disturbing marriage this was. And this is why, to me, women need to educate themselves more, get brave enough to look at the whole problem.
Now, can I just interject one thing, and I'll just shut up for the rest of the week? Your family puts the in dysfunction. Okay? You took the fun out of dysfunction. And you just put the dis in there.
They certainly weren't the only ones. I'm telling you. I saw others who were acting just as crazy in their marriages, and quite a few times I would suspect the shadow man problem. Because I went on ahead and studied my whole life. I studied men like this. I had a husband, and I thought was a shadow. I had boyfriends, and I talked, took notes, wrote books. I wrote 2 books of novels about men that I met that I thought were, passing as something else, and had this kind of thing going on in the shadows. Well, I didn't even try to get this published because, for the same reason, the subject has not emerged as pertinent, as necessary, as something that people need to be addressing, even though it's quite prevalent. It's just not acknowledged. It's just not. Women are still not sure enough of themselves, or not actually, they're discouraged from looking too close, especially if they're married to one and he's a powerful man. They're very much discouraged from looking at it from this angle. And women are always going to want powerful. My father was a powerful man. That's why my mother married him. He had prospects. He was smart. And his father was.
Well, let's face it, with a last name like that, you got no place to go except
cattle rancher.
Right?
So he was the son of a man who had assets. And women are always going to want to connect to this kind of man. And I was the product of this marriage. Mm-hmm. So I hope that I can get these memoirs off the ground. I'm putting them I'm publishing them through the blogger. It's the Daughters of the Shadow Men Memoir. And I'm starting again. I'm getting them going to sort of test the waters, to see how the family can respond to that, and then go from there, probably to try to find publication, to publish the memoir.
I told you I only give you the money to do it.
Well, yeah, but I'd like a publisher who's willing to, who wants to, I don't want just 2 or 3 copies or 50.
Wait a minute. I told you I'd buy.
You're not a publisher.
I'd 6 copies. I'll buy 5, and you can keep.
Yeah,
them,
he thinks this has no. But I'm aiming to get this book into the American consciousness so that more women can start thinking about it. And another important thing to think about is my dad was suicidal, extremely suicidal. And that was another big problem I had to contend with.
If you ride a horse, you're not suicidal every day.
If you pressure people enough and make them feel that whatever they are doing is so bad that we can't even talk about it, it's so terrible, we can't accept it. Now this is the gays have waged this struggle to be recognized as human beings with feelings that are human. So that's another big area where we need to take different attitudes toward the homosexual behaviors. We can't act like they're the worst things on earth if we expect to save these people. My dad, first and foremost, no matter what he was doing, my first priority was seeing that he did not get so depressed that he killed himself. And he made some attempts that I thought just about killed him, and he also drank enough to kill himself in a very suicidal manner.
We knew it was coming around sooner or later.
Suicide, well, he's not nearly as desperate as my dad to kill himself. Yes. He'd have done it long ago.
Now, I'll tell you something else. I'm also not bisexual.
I know. So he doesn't have
That day's not over, folks.
Well, people aren't looking at him like...
take me on just like that.
I mean, my poor dad, just when you're acting like, he can't be homosexual, the grandkids, you know, this is the most disgraceful, horrible thing, you know. Now that attitude's got to go, for heaven's sakes. It's existed since time immemorial, since armies went on the road for months at a time. You think that they didn't have sex?
What do you think the ship's captain had a boy?
Oh, yes. Ships sailing for months on the seas with nobody but sailors.
Well, you couldn't take any women up there. They'd get tortured.
Of course not. So people have to get over this idea that this is such a horrible, horrible disgrace that they can't even hear about it. That they can't even have a grandfather who might have dipped into this. I mean, what are you going to do if your son happens to get involved? You're going to go around saying this is the most horrible, disgusting, terrible thing. And then if suicidal, think of that. You drive people to the point with your condemnation. I'm the only one that's normal. These people are depraved. They're
something wrong with it.
These kind of attitudes have got to go if you expect to handle this problem without driving people right. So that's another reason for doing it. Another reason for talking about it is to try to think about all the ways that you could handle this without making people feel that they're worthless, that they shouldn't even be living on this earth. My dad, that was what I tried to do, is keep him alive. And I tried to keep every man that I met who was extremely suicidal because of this alive. I tried to get him over a suicidal crisis so that he could go on living and didn't have to kill himself. We have no right to drive people to suicide over something like that.
No way.
No right whatsoever.
Maybe if you think about this from a little different attitude, that the men that you meet are not suicidal until after you meet them. I'm thinking pretty serious about that
I'm sure
myself.
my mother probably thought he
I'm pretty serious about that.
He was
right
going to
now.
commit suicide over my mother. Raving and caving at me. Yes, this is true, but people, it's not a problem that we should just, you know, we could even make jokes. Eventually, is my goal. I've actually made a lot of jokes about it, you know, but you know, my kids are still taking this pretty. The grandkids, you know, so
it's Scary Jerry again, right?
Yeah, Scary Jerry. He calls me Scary Jerry.
Well, I can get away with it because I know you.
Yeah. So anyway, I'll give you some updates from time to time about how these memoirs are going.
Another little slice of heaven, folks.